right, y'all. It is time to shine. It is time to shine. I'm your host, Julian Smartrimple. We are back for another very special episode of the Jewelz podcast show and vidcast series. Hopefully, you've been enjoying us this season thus far. We are literally hitting the ground rolling for this new season. And so if this is your first time joining us, shout out to our wisdom listeners and even those who are on Twitter space listening to us for our episode. But you are now one of our smart jewels, one of our smart jewel listeners. And so the RTJ Lifestyle Show was created to spread inspiration to young professionals and millennial entrepreneurs who want to learn wisdom on how to shine brighter in their careers or their businesses. And so if you are a millennial, shout out to our millennials. If you are a Gen Zer, we always got love for Gen Z. But even if you're a baby boomer, we always got love for the baby boomers out there. But if you're an entrepreneur or a young professional that is wanting to learn key jewels in how to shine in your career or in your business or your industry, you're in the right place to be. Also, for those who may be interested in joining myself or any of our future hosts on the RTJ show, if you are a dynamic king or a queen that has a phenomenal testimony, if you're trailblazing or literally killing it in your industry or your business sector, feel free to fill out the interest form. We do always look for new talent, new guests that are not afraid to share their jewels of wisdom with our audience. And so feel free to click the link that we're putting in the comment section below, and our team will comb through your data and see if you have what it takes to be our guest on one of our upcoming seasons. Also, you can listen to us and find all of our previous episodes from RTJ season 1 all the way now to season 3, you all. And so you can track us to see our progress, to see our journey, see some of our highs, our lows, and even some of our hiccups along the way, because we do share a lot of behind the scenes access to our progress for the RTJ show and the Smart Jewels Network. And so listen to us on Wisdom, Twitter Spaces, and any podcast streaming platform that you listen to your favorite artist or your favorite podcast at. Also, we appreciate those who are rocking with us for our live Q&A episode today on Wisdom and Twitter Spaces. If you have any questions for our very special guests, feel free to put them in the comment section below, or you can feel free to come onto the stage and ask any questions you may have for our very special guest. And so without further ado, I think we have one wisdom listener that wants to come onto the stage. But let me just introduce my very special guest. We're bringing up Mr. James Uplifting Edwards, who's going to be talking to us about how to create and also even maintain what it takes to create and maintain a successful podcast. And so you're going to be learning about key jewels and also key tips in how Brother James was able to create his podcast, and also how he's continuing to show other content creators and podcasters how to have a dynamic podcast on their own. I met James, shout out to Ona, the founder of the Black Pod Festival and Black Pod Collective in Atlanta last year, through a fellow king, a fellow brethren, Stafford, who myself and Stafford went to Hampton University, the real HU together. And I met James and the rest of his co-host at the Black Pod Festival, and definitely wanted to stay in contact and network with James so that we can definitely have a building foundation upon like-minded content creators. And so I'm going to introduce you to my very special guest, James Uplifting Edwards, so you can see what he has in store for us today for our episode. And so, James, how you doing today, King?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, brother. Tell us, Jay, a little bit about yourself, man, because we thank you for taking time out of your schedule to rock with us today. But tell us, Jay, like, where are you from originally? Where are you tuning in with us today? And then also, like, why is this an important subject for you to talk to us about?
Well, I'm from Baltimore. I'm in Glen Burnie, pretty much Maryland, which is outside of Baltimore. And I believe that a lot of people want to start podcasts, but they don't really use the right tools and they don't invest in the right tools to be successful in the craft immediately.
Absolutely. Yeah, so y'all are going to be in for a treat with King James, who's going to be dropping a ton of jewels on us today with his episode, What It Takes to Have a Successful Podcast. And so, wisdom listeners, I did see someone that was trying to come up. Feel free to come onto the stage. We do have live Q&A session that begins now for James and myself. And so, James, let's see. I think we got someone that has a question for you on wisdom. And shout out to our wisdom listeners for today who are tuning in for our live behind the scenes episode. But we have James, I want to say Zahara, that is coming to the stage for you. Zahara, how are you doing today, Queen?
I'm doing okay. I want to answer your question, what it takes to have a successful podcast. And so what it takes to have a successful podcast, consistency. You got to stay consistent. You got to make sure you reel in a good audience. Like my favorite artist taught me, Aaliyah, she taught me that audience can be fickle and you can never really tell what someone can be thinking, or you never could tell what they're thinking. So you want to make sure your listeners are inspired and encouraged and leave home saying, hey, they helped me out a great deal. And so I just want to come on here and support my two Black kings, and let's give them a round of applause.
We appreciate
it. Good job. And kudos to you. Be blessed and God bless.
We appreciate that, Zahara. Shout out to you, Zahara Samuels, who's tuning in on the Wisdom app. Zahara, do you have any questions for James? We're just getting started with his episode. Do you have any questions you want to ask a fellow podcaster and a fellow content creator before we let you go?
Well, I don't have any questions, but thank you so much and God bless. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zahara, for taking time to come on and share with us for today's episode. But Jay, I know Zahara definitely is also a podcaster herself, and definitely is a content creator like us. So like, Jay, like, tell us about your story while we have our wisdom listeners and Twitter space listeners listening in. Like, tell us, like, how did you get into podcasting, King? Like, did you have someone show you the way? Did you have basically all the way that you jumped in with both feet down? Like, how did you get into the podcasting lane?
It's actually funny. Me and Stafford, who you mentioned, were just sitting around one night and we were having conversations, and the idea came to us because we've been sitting around talking about starting a business or a venture of some sort collectively for a long time. And at that time we said, these conversations that we're having need to be heard. So we thought about, creating a podcast. And what we didn't know was how hard it is, how difficult it can be to be consistent. But at the same time, yeah, we just jumped straight in. I watched YouTube videos for about 4 or 5 days straight. And then, it just went from there. And I made a ton of mistakes along the way. So, but I feel that, before you read a book or before you try to create this great strategy, sometimes the best thing to do is just to take action.
Yeah, no, that's a major key right there that James is dropping on us already. He's dropping jewels early in the game. You got to take action, you all. You just heard from James, and you hear from a lot of our guests that all the practice, all the research, that's cool and all. That may be a lot of the early stages of the process, but you have to get in the game and take action. And so, like, Jay, like, stay with that point too right there. Like, I know you have co-hosts that you have worked with on not just your podcast, but on other podcasts too. And so, like, tell us, like, how should one go about even finding the right synergy to have the right co-host so that you don't basically end up having to solo host your own show if the synergy and the chemistry doesn't work out.
What I'll say is don't do a podcast with friends. I'm joking, but I think you should have everything outlined in the beginning, what everybody's jobs are, specific expectations, and if those expectations aren't met, I think you should have some clauses to where you will just end the podcast. And the only reason I say that is because you don't want to lose a friend, you don't want to lose a good associate or anybody that you're closely connected to over a podcast. It's never that serious. And those things try to kind of happen in business, but that's why I say if you have some documentation that's clearly outlined as to whatever the expectations are of everyone, including the money that's supposed to be put into the podcast, because podcast is a lot of upfront money and not money coming in unless you have a large following. So you want to have those type of conversations before you just sit down and talk on a mic, because somebody has to do the audio, somebody has to edit the video, somebody has to get the right lighting, somebody has to do a lot of pieces of the podcast, and then you still have to create a show that's very cohesive. So you want to make sure that obviously you want to have a good relationship with the person, but you could always pick somebody who just speaks well and you have a decent relationship with them, and that podcast may go a lot further than someone you have intimate relationships with.
Man, that's a jewel right there, King. You gotta know your talent and also know your teammates, personalities, and also literally their follow through. We know we're in the NBA playoff season right now, and we see a lot of teams that are breaking down with their chemistry, and some teams are actually like keeping their dynamic chemistry afloat as they go into the off season. And so like stay with that point too, King. When it comes to like finding the right roles or the right key positions, I know you spoke on, for those that may not know, like there's an audio component, there's a visual component, there's a hosting component, even show notes. Like talk about for those people who may be wanting to start a podcast and they're listening to your episode, Jay, like what are some of the key roles or the key players that you need to have a successful podcast?
Well, I can actually start with, the Prodigal Brothers podcast, which is set to relaunch. We don't have a date, but when we started, we had 4 people. We had 4 members, and one guy worked on radio, so he was our audio guy. He was our show notes guy. We had someone who was in graphics and content before, so he actually gave me tips on how to edit video, and I was able to edit the video, but he was doing our graphics for us and had input on, what content we would put out. Al was pretty much Stafford, which was pretty much helping create the show and curate a show. And then, when we sat down and got it together, it was a beautiful thing, man. But you got to have someone who's good with the audio, because a podcast is an audio experience. I think that's one thing that's really missing when people see podcasts, because they think of it as a show. But ultimately, if your audio doesn't sound good, nobody's going to listen to you for an hour, let alone 10 minutes. I know I'm not. I listen to podcasts all the time, and that's the one thing that will make me cut your podcast off immediately. Especially, I look for new podcasts all the time. I want to see what people are talking about. It's market research for me, and it's just, I don't know if I'm missing a hidden gem somewhere. So you want to make sure that your audio is good. Your video quality can always be upgraded. So you can always upgrade your video quality. But the audio is the most important thing, because people hear you before they see you. So you want to have a good audio person. You want to have somebody that's good at editing. And you can outsource these things. They also have AI programs that do it for you, but that's added cost. So those are things that have to be agreed upon by the group. And you have to ensure that everybody puts in. So For us, it was Cash App at a time, but if you could get a specific account that all the money earnings from the podcast go into that account, so that you can fund these additional services, so you can have more time to just maybe create a great show.
Yeah, James is already giving y'all the blueprint, you all, especially when it comes to literally setting up your roles, and also some of the key players that you may want to recruit. He's dropping already a ton of jewels on literally how to form your successful team, even your successful role players for productive and successful podcasts. And wisdom listeners, we are definitely taking any live Q&A questions that you may have for James, whether you are a fellow podcaster or content creator, or if you're just looking to get into the space. Feel free to come onto the stage or on Twitter and ask any questions that you have for James. We are in our Q&A session for today's segment. And so, like, Jay, stay with that point with the audio, where we know that there's tons of different variations or company brands of audio equipment that one can get. But what are the ones that you like the most from what you've seen since you've started podcasting? And then even for those that may be on a shoestring budget, they may not have like a long amount of money to really spend on high-end equipment. Like, what are some things that you would recommend they start with, or even some brands that you think they should start with?
Well, the mic that I'm talking on is a dynamic mic. So your dynamic mic is only going to pick up audio when you speak into it. That's the greatest thing. So with a condenser mic, don't get a condenser mic. And your dynamic mics, they have the smaller Shure mics. Those are expensive, so obviously don't get those. But this Samson, I don't know the actual model number, but this Samson mic, the one that I'm talking on, is great. And it's USB, and it is I don't know the name of this cord. I'm not that technical, but it's speaker. It's for microphones as well, so you can use it here. You can use it like with a mixer or without a mixer is essentially what I'm saying. So that's the great thing about this mic, and it's only like 60 or 8. I think it was $80 when I got it. So you could buy a couple of these, or you could not eat lunch or something like that for a couple of days and grab one of these. It's not that difficult. And it also plugs into your computer. And then when you want to edit your audio, I use GarageBand, which is on a Mac, which is free. At first we were using, I can't think of it, but Windows has a free edition for recording your podcast as well. But I use GarageBand. I like all the features that you can add to it. And then when you want to edit your podcast, I use Auphonic. It's like $11.99 or something a month, which is not too much. If you're going to be doing a lot of podcasts, I think it's absolutely worth it. And it cancels out all the noise, background noise. It can focus on the music. It can focus on your audio and music. And the beta version has worked for me very, very well. When you hear my podcast, that's the one thing that I believe stands out to most people, is how crisp the audio is. You don't hear a lot of crazy stuff, except for the Jerk Center episode where I was live and I didn't figure out that Auphonic had the capability to do that. But I recently did an episode in Colorado. It was live. We were in a studio, photography studio. There was a lot going on. And, I just check the box, let it process. Boom. It sounded crystal clear. Like you can hear me now.
Man, that's like you said, great trial and error when it comes to what works and also what works with your budget. Because like James is telling us, you gotta be able to stack your coins, you all, in order to make sure that you have your paper up, because you are going to be investing in yourself and in your brand, especially in the quality of your podcast. And so you have to make sure that you stack your paper up, you all. And shout out. Go ahead, Jeff. Yeah,
like,
go ahead.
You can literally have everybody has powerful iPhones. You could literally record, especially with the iPhones that we have now. The older iPhones didn't sync with the audio, but iPhone 12 and up, if you have that $1,000 phone and your friend has $1,000 phone, you can get 2 camera angles and sync the audio with that, and you'll have crystal clear video as well. So, I mean, it's already something that you have. You're already using it. You can record an hour to 4 hours depending on your storage, and most of the iPhones come with, I think, 128 gigs. So you may have to clear some stuff out, but you know, get you a Samsung mic. You can have your computer set up. It has 2 USBs and 2 iPhones. You got 2 angles. You got a video and audio podcast.
Man, you
Some
right.
lights, some house lights. Just buy the daylights at Walmart for like $20, and you got some great lighting. Or
man, you're right, King. Yeah,
Yeah.
James is telling you have no excuses. Those who are listening or watching us live for this episode, he's dropping the jewels. He's saying use what you have. You can use your cell phone. He said you can use regular lighting, ring lights that you can purchase. So you don't need all the heavy duty equipment in studios that we see a lot of people on YouTube, on IG, or even on Facebook that have all the bells and whistles. It does not take all of that to have a successful podcast. And so, Jay, we're going to give you a quick commercial break, King, so we could let you get a quick rest while we honor our VIP sponsor. Each and every episode, you all, we highlight a VIP sponsor or partner that we partner with for our podcast, the Run the Jewelz podcast. And so if you are an entrepreneur or a business owner, we definitely want to advertise and also highlight your business or your product or service. And so let's take a look and see who our VIP sponsor is for today, you all. Definitely shout out to all of our VIP sponsors too that made this season a success. And so shout out thus far for this season. But let's take a look and see who our VIP sponsor or affiliate is for today, you all. So shout out again to our VIP sponsor for today, which comes from none other than Wisdom. Shout out to all of our Wisdom listeners that are tuning in live with us for today's episode. But Wisdom is our affiliate partner. You can receive $25 when you join Wisdom today. You can join the Wisdom app. It's an awesome audio and entertainment app for coaches, for podcasters, for content creators, and even for entrepreneurs and business owners to have intimate one-on-one dialogues and even private chats with their community, with their tribe. And so if you have loved Clubhouse, but if you are wanting to literally get more of a independent and smaller, intimate feel with your audience, Wisdom, you definitely need to join Wisdom. And so you can receive $25 just by joining today. by signing up with the link we have in the comment section. So shout out to Wisdom and also our Wisdom listeners. But back to you, definitely, Jay. We wanted to highlight our VIP sponsor for today, for Wisdom. We wanted to definitely discuss, man, like talk to us about some of the hurdles or even some of the initial struggles of, like you mentioned, starting up a podcast. We know you said there were some initial struggles that people need to be aware of when you're first starting, especially when it comes to consistency. And so, like, what are some hurdles that you all were able to overcome, and then even you personally as a podcaster that you have been able to like grow through and transition through?
Just time. Time is a valuable thing. You know, time is money, and I don't believe in money. When I give, someone money, I'm giving them my time, and that's how valuable I feel it is. And getting time to so we thought we had a day when we recorded, but we had nothing after that. So we didn't have a editing day or a post edit day or how when we were going to post. And we just knew that we would get together on Saturday, record, and then we're going to try to get everything done by Friday. But there was no cadence. We had no structure. And like I said, we just jumped in feet first. So it was great at first, right? The excitement is there, but that excitement slowly but surely wanes as you consistently have to deliver for your audience who expect you. Because I have a mentor that has a podcast, and his podcast he's been podcasting before podcasting got popular. And I remember the one thing I talked to him about was, how did you have success? And he said, people expect you to show up. And when you don't show up, they go somewhere else and you rarely get them to come back. So the hardest thing for us was really just consistently figuring out what day we're going to do this. Then we had to figure out a meeting day so that we could follow up and see where we were at with, where's the content, how's the audio doing, are we sure on what, do we want to keep this in the podcast? Because there, most podcasts are pre-recorded and the post edit stuff happens and we don't know what we want to keep. We don't know if we like how we sounded on that topic. And also, you also just got to prepare for bad things to happen, because we lost a lot of audio not using the right program in the beginning. And I still can't remember the name of that program because I've been using GarageBand so long, but we were using a program that was freezing, and we had we had bad equipment. So you got to prepare for things like that too, and you have to allot enough time, because we would say, oh, we're going to sit down for 2 hours on a Saturday. And we're all grown men, families, kids, and 2 hours. If we say 2 hours, everybody else expects our responsibilities expect 2 hours. So we had to move that to 4 hours. Then we tried to double up episodes, and that created a higher workload that we weren't ready for. So there are so many things that you want to just try to account for in the beginning. But what I would say is, throughout it all, just keep going and you'll figure it out. If you maintain the same excitement that you had when you started and you weren't in the weeds, you'll be able to consistently, do a podcast. Like for Keep It Uplifting, I think I'm on episode 170, 172 or something. And we've lost a lot of those podcasts, and recently did a relaunch, and now it's me and guests, but it used to be me and the co-host, and it's just a lot. So just prepare for things to go wrong, and accept that the more you keep going, you'll be able to overcome every obstacle, every hurdle that gets in your way.
Man, I love those jewels right there, King, because I know you said it a couple times now in the interview. Today is relaunching, and a lot of times we as content creators or people who may be perfectionists, they think that if it's not going as planned that you can't pivot or transition or relaunch. Use words like that. And so tell us real quick, like Jay, why it's important to have a mindset to pivot or even have a mindset to relaunch or transition when things may not be going as planned, so that you don't get frustrated and really just throw in the towel and quit on all the hard work and even the money that you may have spent on equipment, platforms, etc. Like, why is it important to think in words like relaunch and transition?
Because the Seth Rogen said this recently on some podcast, but he was just like and it's so simple, but he said the only way you lose is if you stop. Right? That's the only way you lose. So if you hit a wall. Okay, so how do you get over it? How do you get around it? How do you get through it? And that's really and that goes for life. I think the biggest lesson in something like a podcast, because your first podcast may not end up as successful as you thought it would be, and you may not bring in all the fame and views and money that you thought it would be, but you find a lot you find out a lot about yourself when you're doing a podcast, because there's no real way of marketing this, right? Like if you're a rapper, you get on the radio. If you're a business, there's SBA stuff that you can get in. There's a product that you're selling that you could do pop-up shops and stuff for. But when you put your audio out there, there's really no way to market it but you have to figure out how to engage an audience and capture an audience. And yes, we have social media, but everybody's doing it, right? So how do you carve out space for yourself? And that's by showing up. That's by figuring it out. And the one thing that I've really learned, especially recently, is you have to make a way out of no way. And if you want, I'm a faith guy. So, you keep God first, you have faith, you believe in yourself. Things seem to just drop in front of you when you need them to happen. And that's not always going to happen. You shouldn't expect it to happen that way. But typically, if you keep going, you're going to run into something good and you're going to run into something bad. But a lot of times there's more good than bad on the end of all that struggle.
Man, that's a jewel in itself right there, King. To definitely keep going and also to embrace the struggle. And shout out to StreamYard, who is the platform that is powering our episode today. You could definitely support StreamYard and get $10 off a subscription by clicking on the link that we're putting in the comment section below. But wisdom listeners, you already hear James dropping a ton of jewels on why it's important to not give up throughout the process. Does anyone in our wisdom audience want to chime in or even have any questions for James in what we are discussing in his episode, what it takes to have a successful podcast, or even on any of the philosophies that you all may have as content creators on why it's important to trust the process? So wisdom listeners or any of our listeners on Twitter, if you have any questions for James, feel free to ask them at this time, because this is our live Q&A session, you all. So don't be shy. This is an interactive show. Myself and James, we are, of course, are leading the charge, but we want to make sure we can answer and educate any of our listeners on any of the questions that you may have for James today. And so feel free to come onto the stage at any time. But James, stay with that point, King, when it comes to like your mindset shift that you have when it comes to uplifting, where you have the title of your podcast, which speaks for itself, because you're always dropping a lot of jewels on how to stay positive, uplift yourself throughout the day, throughout the week. And so talk to us about why it's important to really think about the title of your podcast, and how should that embrace the host, or how should the host or the co-host really embrace that branding or that title that you're calling your podcast? And how did you even come up with your podcast name too?
Well, Keep It Uplifting was something I was doing when I used to lift weights, and I still lift weights, but and I'm trying to get back in shape. But I will say running a business and doing still having a job is a lot. So some things will be sacrificed, but you got to figure that out, which I'm still tweaking. But I came up with the name Keep It Uplifting because I was working out for a bodybuilding show. So I could only work out at night. So I was like, I'm uplifting while I'm uplifting. So I would give you a positive message. I was cutting weight and I was doing that. And so it just branched into my walks where, on TikTok, I got a large following by just, giving people a quote and, spreading a positive message while walking, 7 miles a day. And then I said, well, maybe I can expand on this by creating a podcast, right? So that was a lot of my episodes in the beginning. And now the show is something to where we actually want, I say, welcome to the Keep It Uplifting podcast, where we show and prove that the growth and change you seek is possible. And I'm able to sit down with many people who I've either worked with, friends, or just social media influencers I reached out to, or business owners. And the message is just the message is consistent, right? Like you have to persevere, you have to persist, and you have to have patience. Also to touch on, your titling for want your podcast to be searchable. So Keep It Uplifting in the self-development, self-improvement space is definitely a searchable title. It's definitely a eye-catching title. So you want to have something like that as well. And that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. It was already me, and I just put it into a podcast, and I stuck with the title, and it seems to fit well.
Yeah, it's definitely a very catchy title. Like I said, when I first found out about meeting you last year, and then was able to like research, especially the podcast that you're affiliated to, Keep It Uplifting, and even keeping it uplifting always should be a mindset that we all have. And so with your podcast name, Keep It Uplifting, is a easy and also very distinct name to really section yourself off. And that goes even into like the next point, which you and I, we discussed this recently. Like, explain to people, Jay, who may not know anything about podcast when they're viewing podcasts, like explain the difference between short form viewing a podcast versus long form or long content viewing of a podcast episode. Like, tell people what's the difference between short versus long term or long form content, and like why it's important to know the difference when you are going into podcasting.
Yeah, your short form content is reels, TikToks, shorts, but it's also the catchy points of the podcast, right? The points that are going to lock you in and make people say, where can I get this full episode? That's what the shorts are for. The shorts are your marketing, right? It's your appetizers before you get to your entree, right? That's your long form. Your long form is the entree and dessert, right? You got some ads in there. There's some affiliate marketing in there, but also long form connects you with your audience, right? They're going to be biking. They're going to be in Target. They're going to be in Walmart with you. That's why the audio experience is so important. And I can't emphasize that enough. You got to make sure the audio experience is something that makes somebody want to return, but that's also that raw audio connects to your video, right? And that long form video is something that you want somebody to be able to sit through as well. So audio has to be great. And then, the video can always be upgraded, but I see a lot of people on YouTube with great success because the video does matter. I don't say it doesn't, but the content and knowing the audience that you're trying to reach is absolutely what truly matters. And then there's some other strategies that you got to get into that, of course, I'm still working through. But short form is what is going to lead people to your long form content.
Yeah, and that's critical from what James is telling us with those jewels right there, because our team is even learning in depth about the importance of short form content when you are doing a podcast. And even James has put me on to some of his team that he uses, and I've talked to others that literally like concentrate a majority of their marketing and focus on short term versus really not being as concerned with the long form content. And so it is something that you for sure need to research and need to know about. How are you going to get your short form content out there, you all? And so like James, when it comes to that point of like the mission or the vision of like what a podcast should do in, let's say, your seasons that you're running a podcast in, do you believe in like having a podcast run in seasons, or do you believe like a podcast should be ran in a series? Like how should someone structure their episodes or even their content period when they're doing a podcast? And even how have you seen it work successful for your multiple podcasts that you've been on and been a host of?
I think it really depends on what the point of the podcast is, right? My podcast is episodic. So it's all motivation. It's just never really going to change. Obviously, like I said, we moved to guests and them sharing their stories now, but it's still a inspirational podcast. So I don't think there's a specific, there's one way to skin a cat per se. But if if you're selling a product, or if you're doing entrepreneurship, I've seen a lot of those podcasts have seasons where they're, it's like season 1 is how to build your, creating a business plan and why that's important. Season 2 is strategy and why that's important for the business. Finance is season 3, and I've seen those podcasts do well. We had a themed podcast, or we have a themed podcast as far as the Prodigal Brothers. So every season for that, and that's why we started with seasons. Every season for that is themed at guiding, a certain level of direction for the people that we're trying to reach out to, the audience that we're trying to connect with.
Wow. Yeah, that's critical right there, King. And especially with the episodic and the theme, like tell people, King, and this is I know hit or miss based off of who you're asking this question to, but like how many episodes do y'all have before y'all basically transition into a new season? And like what is the common amount of episodes that you've seen from podcasts that you even listen to? You should know when you're going into the next season, just for those who may not know about podcasts.
So I've seen 8 to 12 episodes. We started with 12 and went to 15. The one thing I want to say about seasons is continue the seasons. Pre-record if you have to, but and I think that was, and I feel that's the issue. I won't even say I know that's the issue with product. Like, we can't have a lot of time off with a podcast. One, you're going to lose your audience, which I spoke about, and 2, life is going to get in the way. So that is, to me, if you are doing a podcast and you know that you have the ability, or you're prone to not being consistent in multiple ways, just go episode by episode. So if you show up on, you got to show up on Tuesday, or you got to show up on Thursday, whatever day of the week that your pod premieres, you always got to show up. I think episodic is the best for you, because if you're going to do a season and then you're going to be gone for a year and you're just starting your podcast, I don't know if that's the best way for success. I can be wrong. If you've already cultivated an audience and built the audience to where they expect you to be gone for a long time before you return, then fine. But if it's not Power or any of those BMF or any of those powerful shows like that have the backing of writers and producers and executive producers and multiple dollars going into marketing, I would say just keep your show episodic, or make sure your season 1 and season 2 almost overlap.
Hey, that's real jewels right there. Because a lot of podcasts, I'm sure that you all listeners, Smart Jewels listeners that are listening, and even like James said, have said that they're starting a new season up, and then literally 2 years later, James, you're like, hey, what happened to that season premiere? You're like, hey, did they go off the planet? Did they fall off the map? Like, what happened? And so I know I've even had to chuckle at that because we had to take a little brief break from last season to this season. But yeah, you definitely have to let your audience know when you're coming back, and even to stay up to date with your audience. And that was what I was gonna transition to our final points as we wind down the interview. Like how have you seen your audience like grow with you, and even like have you seen a newer audience come on as you've relaunched and even pivoted in certain ways that y'all do on the podcast that you're affiliated with or that you're even a host of? And like why does your audience matter the most in making sure you're giving them content that they actually want to listen to?
I mean, who are you creating? Like, your product is for somebody, right? You're serving. The whole point of, creating a podcast, in my opinion, is to serve. So you have a product that you feel that can serve people on. So, and that's a lot of business podcasts. They're selling a course, they're selling their trucking company, they're selling services that can benefit people. If people are coming to you for entertainment, people need that in their lives. The world is crazy, right? I'm looking for you to make me happy, right? So why are you not showing up? What you doing? Why is it late? And we've gotten that too. Y'all releasing a podcast today? So you have to understand that the audience is the reason. The audience is the reason you're creating it, right? Like you're creating it for yourself initially, but somebody wants to enjoy the art that you're creating. Somebody wants to enjoy that audio experience. So you got to be sure that you're showing up consistently. And momentum is one of the hardest things to stop. It's one of the hardest things to create, but it's one of the hardest things to stop. So I definitely say that you should be consistent. If there's anything you got out of what I'm saying today, just be consistent. Show up, right? People don't care how you show up, as long as you show up, and then they'll then you can get the feedback like, what you doing? What's this? And my audience has grown and expanded, since I've changed the show around. I've received a lot of love, and people actually like the show now. So I think, people grew with me when I was just podding by myself, it was me and Stafford, and then it was occasional guests, and people liked the way that the show was going, and it's showing in the numbers, it's showing in the reviews, and it's showing in some of the videos. The shorts always do well. The full length videos are starting to grow as well, and the YouTube channel has definitely grown since I started with I want to say 13 subscribers. So
yeah. No, that's progress, like you said, King, because as you mentioned, in literally wanting to make sure that you are progressing and not just staying stagnant, that's really what a podcast content creator's journey is all about, is really seeing progress, because you're not going to have the hundreds of thousands of subscribers or listeners that you may see people capping on social media or YouTube about. You gotta build typically from the ground up, unless you were already an influencer or celebrity coming into the podcast field. And so I know, James, we've talked about a ton of information, King, but I know we're pressed for time, and we want to make sure we're respecting your time. So each and every episode we leave the final jewel for our guests to leave with our audience on literally telling us what would be a final jewel of wisdom, a final nugget, a final piece of wisdom that you would want to leave with our audience out of all the information we discussed today.
I was about to, recite a quote I looked up earlier by Mark Twain, but the past is a prison, and the future is always going to be your best friend. So, live in the present because it's a gift, but never go back to that prison. If you messed up an episode or things didn't go right with your host or whatever the case may be, what would your future self want you to do? That's really all I got for you, man. Think about what your future self wants you to do, and don't let that person down.
That's a major jewel right there, King. That's definitely important. Do not let your future self down. James, how can people stay in contact with you, bro, after today? What ways can they follow you, even ask you any questions if they wanted to talk to you offline? Like, what are some ways that people can stay in contact with you, King?
Keepituplifting.com. You can reach me there. You can email me there. You can sign up to be a guest on the show. All of my social media is there. All of the podcasts are there. The videos are there. It's a one-stop shop. Keepituplifting.com. Up underscore lifting 365. I know underscore is old. Don't judge me. I tried to get uplifting 365 and it wasn't available. So up underscore lifting 365 on IG. And then check out the YouTube channel as well. Uplifting 365. Videos every day, shorts and long form, and some motivation outside of the podcast as well. And we got some new shows and some things that are coming as well to that channel. So reach out and touch me. Reach out and show some love.
Absolutely. Y'all stay in contact with James. He's definitely someone who is personable, and he's been in the podcast field even longer than myself. And literally we met again at the Black Pod Festival. Shout out to the Black Pod Collective, yes, which is the host and the founder of the Black Pod Festival with Ona and her team here based out of Atlanta. But yeah, definitely go and follow James and go and support the uplifting podcast that he has, you all. And so, James, we're going to say a quick prayer over you, King, before we let you go. We always like to bless our guests for taking time out of their schedule to come on to our show. And so if you've been blessed by today's episode, feel free to sow a seed. We always believe in sowing seed where you're able to reap it. And so if this is you, one of our Smart Jewel listeners, you can sow in three ways. You can either give a seed donation at our Cash App at $SMART, SMART, JEWELZ, or you can click the link that we're putting in the comment section to purchase some of our new merchandise that we just launched for this last season. Or you can become a monthly Patreon with us to support us with purchasing new equipment and even for transitioning to different platforms such as StreamYard and other platforms that we use. And so no donation is too small or too large. All the names that you see at the bottom ticker of the screen have been donors, sponsors, or even supporters of our podcast. And so shout out to all of our donors and sponsors for this current season. But James, we want to say a quick prayer over you, King, before we let you go, if that's okay. Is that cool,
yes,
man?
Sir. Yes, please.
Perfect. So, Father, I just want to thank you for James. Thank you for the calling that you have on his life and for all that you are using him to help other people stay uplifted, to help them stay motivated and positive during these times that we're all in right now. That even some people may be struggling, they may be stressed out, they may be depressed, or even some people may be on the edge right now, even that are listening. And we pray that through James' advice and his wisdom that he's given to others, that they will not give up on their own life and that they will stay positive and also stay motivated to continue pressing forward. We thank you for his gifts and his talents that you've given him in his podcast and even others that he is inspiring around him, even those that he may not know about. We pray that you will use him in a mighty way throughout the rest of this time that you've given him. And we pray that you will give him new clients, new listeners, and even a new network of individuals to build this season more than what he's ever seen and more than what he's ever thought about. I love you, Father. I thank you for this time you've allowed us to share today in building up our audience and building each other up as kings. And I love you and give you all the glory, honor, and praise. And it's in Yahshua HaMashiach, the Christ's name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
We appreciate you, King, and coming on for today's episode, man. I know we'll be in touch, bro. Thank you for all that you do and keeping your audience uplifted, King, and we'll talk soon, bro.
All right. Thank you.
All right, man. Peace.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. I'm going to do a quick wrap up. Y'all know how we go. For those who are listening for the first time, we always have our segment called Jewels for Thought that we have at the end of our episodes. And so you heard a lot of information in a short amount of time from my special guest, James Uplifting Edwards, who was talking to us about what it takes to have a successful podcast. The main jewel that I want you to realize for today's episode is that you have to start in order to finish. You have to start the race in order to finish. The race is going to be long. It may be arduous. It may be painful, but you have to start in order to finish. You can't make excuses on why you're not able to start, because those who fail to start never finish. You can't make excuses about why you are not able to start, because then I would even challenge you to even say that you never planned on finishing, because you're not going to make it perfect from the beginning. That takes trial and error. Like James said, that takes literally persistence and discipline. And so if you want to learn how to start your podcast, definitely reach out to my very special guest, James. And even we have services too for those that want to have a podcast or even have executive producers for your podcast. We definitely have services with our Smart Media Essentials plan. You can go to www.smartjewelz enterprises.org to get started on your podcast show creation. We have online conferences and challenges that we're doing this season for business owners, church members, live stream technical assistance, virtual classroom solutions for educators or trainers or entrepreneurs, or even if you're looking to customize your brand or have live streaming host options. We have all of the needs that you are able to use with our Smart Media Essentials packages. Just go to www.smartjewelzenterprises.org. Also, you heard me say you can support us with our new merchandise that we just launched last season with hoodies, with tees, and also with king bracelets and crown bracelets to shine bright. And so we have the Create, Shine, and Pray collection. Go and check us out at the link that we're putting in the comment section, or you can go to www.smartjewelzenterprises.org. And so those are all of my final jewels for thought. Thank you again to those that were tuning in. Hopefully you were able to gain some new information that you didn't know before. But make sure you shine bright like the bright diamond jewel you've been created to be. Until the next time we see you, stay hydrated, stay blessed, and peace.